Welcome back, gentlemen. I know these videos are long. Trust me, for me, they're much longer. And maybe in the future, if I cover another match of any sort, I will think about that a little bit more and try to keep the videos, I don't know, just more watchable length, 5-10 minutes, whatever. But for now, we'll ride it out and I'll keep this format going. We'll look at pretty much every hand that I found interesting throughout the match. I know some of them, like, I do, like, honestly, there was probably 10 hands that I didn't even do. And this video is already looking like it is going to be an hour long. And there's probably 10 reasonably interesting hands that I just decided, fuck it, man, like, it's already this long. Yeah. But, I mean, it's cool. I'm learning more about heads up. It's an interesting format. I don't really think it's, you know, an alive and kicking format. I think you need to get in the Twitter games, talk a bit of shit if you want people to start sitting you, but anyway, whatever. We're about to see a hand start developing on the left-hand side. And it's, yeah, we're doing chronological order, as per usual. It's the first interesting hand of the match. It's not actually the current hand. This hand's about to end. Sorry about the timing of this. I guess I can speed it up. But yeah, we're gonna start things off with just some zero frequency plays, as we'd like to do in this match. We've got the sevens, we've got the Jack 10 suited, a 3-bet, a call. This is very good so far, beautiful stuff. Victor's should be c-betting about 80% of his range on this board. Does sometimes check with this hand, goes for the check. Fedor is going to bet. This hand is a pure check back, so we've node locked it in. Hands like 10s, 9s, 8s, and 7s are just always checking back the flop, basically. Anyway, he does like to bet small. And Victor is not going to raise, he's going to call. And now on the turn, if I node lock this in, this hand just wants to bet for large sizing on the turn because Victor is going to fold a lot of 10s, 9s, and 8s, but also continue with almost all of his 6s. So it's just a value bluff from 7s on the turn. Fedor checks it back, and Victor is going to bet small in the river, which his hand does 100% of the time, so he plays it very well. And Fedor is now going to find, you could call it an exploitative fold, but it's just not a fold. If you've taken this line, your hand always wants to call.
King 10 maybe.
Good read.
Left-hand side table, pocket jacks. I'll run through it reasonably quick because it's not too interesting of a spot, but Victor goes for a check back on the flop. It's like a 1.5% play. I figured it was just never checking back, but for the times he does check it back, like that 1.5% that you maybe can, it is actually checking back 100% on the turn. So to me, as an observer, I thought, well, this is crazy. He's checked back 2 times, but actually, if you do check back the flop, this hand always checks back the turn. And then he chooses to bet half pot on the river. It prefers a slightly bigger size of the options I listed, but it's not really a big deal. So actually a well-played hand, you know, assuming you rolled a 0 or a 1 or whatever. And Fedor also plays his hand well here, not betting turn at all, and not bluffing river at all. It's quite a cool little hand here, the 6-9 offsuit mirror match with a diamond each. Victor starts things off, c-betting 60% pot. Fedor doesn't check raise. This hand type, like the 6-9 off with diamond, is raising a little over 60% total. He calls this time, turns a straight. His range doesn't lead or anything like that on this card. Victor, you're mostly betting this hand, but you can check it back like a third of the time. Like it's a legit play. He probably knows that and decided to check based on an RNG. So he will check it back. The river's where I was just really surprised at the result. Watching the hand play out, I thought, okay, Fedor makes his value bet. He chooses to go half pot, I believe. And Victor has what looked to me like just a mandatory raise. Because Fedor should have some overbets himself. So it's not like that many flushes are in the smaller bet size range. And it feels like, you know, we block some flushes. We have a straight, we can get value. But actually it's just that's a totally wrong thought. The only straight that wants to value raise is 6s with a diamond. And it's quite clever if you think about it, because you block your opponent having a straight. So you get value out of more hands when you do this. They don't have the straight as often, and you know, you still block flushes. Whereas when we have 6-9, we raise, they have a 6, they call, you know, for a smaller size. And so what Victor's range actually wants to do is barely use that smaller sizing. I'm pretty much only doing it with 6s, if you have a look. And instead he wants to just ram. So he just turns a bunch of shit into a bluff that has a diamond, like 8, 9, and things with an 8, because you know you block the nuts straight, plus also block some flushes. And against a shove, I mean, Fedor has a really tough time. He has to find a good mix of calling and folding with a 6, even having to fold some 6s with the diamond, call some 6s that do have a higher diamond. Makes it a very tricky spot. A cool spot overall, and well played by both. Single raise pot on the right, and Fedor is going to check it back. I decided for the sizing, I'd give him on the flop, it would be like a third pot. I'm not sure, because some people pot or even small overbet these boards, as they obviously favor the button a lot more than the big blind defending range. Anyway, not a big deal. He checks it back, and I figured he's firing the turn like always, and his sizing is kind of cool here too. But it's not betting as much as I thought, and the sizing actually favors the smaller one more than the pot, but whatever. Victor's hand's a pure call on turn. If he checks, he can value bet it too. And on the river, I gave some interesting inputs because I figured there'd be some massive bets happening here. Fedor's going to overbet 1 1/3 pot, so 133% pot. I gave another sizing, like almost 350% pot, and that's used also like 8%. Fedor's sizing is used about 12%. And I figured his hand is going to just like overbet mostly, but it actually gives up a lot of the time. So yeah, it's kind of a tricky one, but like Victor's not really supposed to fold many kings, and he ends up correctly calling with the hand that he has. But yeah, I figured Fedor's hand would be bluffing probably all the time, and even for bigger bet sizes, but nope, I was wrong. Kind of a cool little hand, running cold, yeah. Right hand side, 3-bet pot, Fedor has c-bet. His hand's mostly doing this. Victor has called, and his hand's always doing this. Not too interesting so far. Fedor is going to bet the turn, which his hand often does. The highest frequency combos, I guess, of ace-queen that bet the turn have a heart and a spade. Basically, if you block continues, it's better to barrel. He blocks some continues, so his hand bets more than, you know, an ace-queen of clubs, etc. But not as much as, you know, having one of each suit. After this hand resolves Victor saying, oh, I wish I shoved the turn, or, you know, indicates he would have liked to maybe have shoved the turn. But he does correctly decide not to. I mean, technically his hand does shove the turn 5%, but, you know, it's hard to get a read on your hand shoving 5% on turn. The flush draws that he is shoving on the turn are like queen and ace high. Not sure exactly why that's preferred. You think like with the extra equity that this hand has with the gutty, it does seem alright to shove. Plus you could get your opponent to fold like a queen jack, unless it was of hearts, which could cool you on a 9. So whatever. Anyway, he's played it well. Fedor always checks the river in theory and does check in game. He's basically found himself in a spot where he's value bet twice with ace queen high. And this is a very, very brick river. It cuts Victor's value range down a lot, and he gets incredible odds on a call. So as this is developing, like he knows he has to check. He's just thinking, am I going to call this fucking guy? You know, he's taking his time a little bit to balance his range for timing. But he's probably also thinking, am I calling if this dude shoves? And Victor's thinking, fuck, everything missed, he's probably calling, but I got a bluff. And he does got a bluff, otherwise he's not playing his hand well. So he is going to end up finding the river bluff, and should Fedor call? That's the question. Don't know, have a think about it while they're tanking a bit, I could speed it up. Do you think he should call? Do you not think he should call? And what could the reasoning be? There's a key here to whether or not you should call with this hand, because this hand is calling a decent amount, as in ace-queen offsuit. And yeah, maybe some of you figured that out, but the key is you don't want your queen suit to block flush draws. Because if your opponent has a queen-high flush draw, he is going to have to bluff the river. So either flush draw or queen-high will be bluffing. If you block those, it's enough of a reason to fold. And we'll see if we can get some player audio here.
Your face, Victor.
Very nice
When it gets
hand.
a bit random, I know I have to.
Good. Yeah, I felt you might call me there. Oh,
You guys are wondering why I look a bit different. besides this excellent shirt that I put on just for the boys. I copped a little bow. Bow in the joy. I don't know, I think you can kind of see it. It looks a bit wonky to me. In some basketball today, so don't know if it's noticeable, but might as well mention it. 3-bet pot on the right. This is an interesting one. Fedor gonna go for a c-bet. His hand checks more than other 4-5 combos. Just not that good, you know, like it's 5 high. And the other ones, like, they have less to lose by betting than the 4-5 of clubs does. But whatever, he bets this time. Still something he's doing about 60% of the time. With the 4-5 flush draw. Victor calls. He can actually raise a little bit, but whatever, doesn't matter. The turn is where it's interesting. We watched this on stream, like while I was putting all the hands together. And I was thinking, yeah, this is like a check, you know, because it's so rough, you barrel, and like you can't jam this. You can jam a decent amount of stuff in your range, but this hand just sucks ass to jam. Anyway, he's gonna find a bet. It's a tough bet. I just felt like because this bet like makes the SPR so awkward, you're gonna get jammed on a bunch, all this kind of shit. I just felt like you probably don't bet, but it does bet 10%, and who knows what he rolled. So he finds a bet here. It's not that frequent of a play, but it is a play. And yeah, like you wouldn't think that this is the way that you're supposed to play the ace-10 with the ace of clubs here, but Victor is actually supposed to jam like quite often with ace-10 offsuit. You always have a club when you peel the flop, or a backdoor flush draw like with the diamonds, but ace of clubs likes a turn jam. I guess because, you know, you're not as worried about the ace-jack of clubs, etc. that are bet calling, or, you know, the ace-queen, ace-king. But yeah, he doesn't do it. I mean, you can't fold him. It's not a very intuitive play. Plus, he might have just rolled low. Like, you're still continuing some of these hands as a call. And the river is where it's quite interesting. I believe in the first round or something, Fedor gave up a missed 5-5 flush draw, and it was a good give up. And this time, he's in a very similar spot. And he actually does block quite a lot of Victor's folds here. Like, there are many queen, king, ace high with a 4, with a 5. Like, there's a decent amount of total combos. Victor can also have the same hand as him. I'm not sure exactly how many it is, but it's something like 8 combos, 9 combos that Fedor is blocking, that are auto-folding for Victor. So his hand is actually a pure give-up. And funnily enough, Victor's hand is just, yeah, this is really sick. So ace-10 offsuit that arrives this way on the river is calling every time when it has the 10 of clubs, and folding when it has the ace of clubs. But more 10 of clubs combos get to the river than ace of clubs. You know, whatever. We're in deep right now, like it doesn't matter too much. But the point is, his hand is a call sometimes, but he chooses correctly to fold with ace of clubs. So who knows if he is aware of the 10 of clubs thing, the ace of clubs thing. But he obviously considers it. He knows that his opponent might have some bluffs and all this kind of shit. But it is ace-10 high. A lot of other hands in his range are stronger. But for the odds that you get, you do have to defend pretty wide on the river. So close spot, Victor ends up folding correctly. And Fedor is going to show. Let's listen in.
Not sure about the turn, but also not sure about the river.
Yeah, river 100%.
River, I think I have to, but it doesn't feel great. But
Yes.
7 is so good.
Right hand side, 3-bet pod. Fedor's going to check flop. A little bit of a trap with the backdoor flush draw and open ender. Victor's hand stabs heaps, especially with backdoor flush. When check 2, and Fedor can raise like 20% of the time for like a smaller sizing. But doesn't do it this time. This hand's it's really not that interesting. It just looked a little bit curious at the time, so I added it in, and I might as well run through it since we have it here. Fedor doesn't do any donking or anything weird on the turn. Victor should actually stab his hand pure, like all combos of queen 4 that bet flop, bluffing the turn here. I guess you just block enough continues with a queen, plus your showdown sucks, and yeah. Anyway, he's supposed to bluff. I gave him a 20% check back. Going into the river, Fedor, I actually messed the sim up slightly and didn't give him this half pot size that he uses. But his range basically only ever bets the smallest sizing I gave, like 3rd pot. So, you know, he could easily do some halving. And against 3rd, Victor's hand is a pure jam. So, I don't know, just kind of interesting. I thought like maybe his hand would be a bluff on the river, given how he got here. But the preferred hands are like 10-6, 10-8. Things with a 10 are better than things with a queen, but there's still a decent amount like queen 6, checking back and then raising all in over a river bet. So yeah, kind of an interesting one. Fedor just half pots and takes it down. Right hand side table, we're going to see, these are smaller pots, but I'm keeping track of them because Victor's going to do a bit of folding in this match and he's getting shit talked for it. Firstly, what about Fedor's raise? For those of you curious about that on the flop, 50% of ace-3 offsuit with ace of clubs, roughly, raising the flop. So nice hand choice. Victor's hand almost always call. Very occasional flop 3-bet. In the low single percents. But yeah, the turn is going to roll off. 3 of clubs. Fedor is going to find a barrel. This is what his range looks like for that, with the mix of sizes. And against the half pot sizing, what should Victor do with the 6-4? What do you think? This is an overfold to fold here. He's got the straight draw. He blocks some straights. He's drawing dead a bit. Half pot, you know, pretty good odds. Yeah, his hand mostly folds, so without a club. With a club, obviously never folding, and without a club, folding a strong amount of this hand. So, I would say, for the first of these spots that come up, Victor Foldanovsky has played it well. Left-hand side table. This is a little bit spicy, this hand. Single raise pot. Victor going to c-bet. And Fedor is going to find a check raise. 5 deuce actually doesn't really want to go for this. But it's not never doing it. It's a 6% flop raise if we have the backdoor flush draw. The other combo is pure flat. And Victor's hand, interestingly, is actually 3-betting the flop, like the 7-3 of diamonds and hearts. 3-betting the flop about a third of the time. So it's one of the hands that likes aggression in this situation. And that is also going to be true for the turn. Fedor's hand mainly goes into bluff catch mode, so the 6% of it that raised the flop is like, I think it's 75% roughly, checking the turn. But he does find a pot barrel, which is the preferred size with his range, and for the times that this hand does bet, it does want to bet this pot size. So nice job. I mean, it's very hard to play like anything close to a solver. So if you're finding the right sizings, if you're finding hands that do make sense, I think, like, you know, this is good play for a human. And Victor's hand, funnily, like, no one's ever getting there with this. Is a pure jam on turn. The only 7-3 suiteds that flat have a flush draw, and they also jam a decent amount. So this is kind of just like a magical hand to be aggressive with on flop and turn, especially this turn. And yeah, pretty interesting. What should they do on the river? What sizing should Fedor use? Should he check it all? No, he should just bet. And yeah, I mean, it's very low frequency, this combo that's arrived here, but he selects the correct choice out of 3 different options that I gave for the river sizing. Should Victor ever call? Because we're trying to keep tabs on if he's overfolding or not, because that's the claim, that he's done a bit of that in this match. No, his hand should never call the overbet. Sorry, the 75% or 70% pot or something. River pot on the right hand table. Also going on at the same time as that 5 deuce hand, for those interested in the sort of leveling war part of the heads up matches where you 2-table or more. Victor is going to check the flop. His hand does it pure. And Fedor is like 50-50 stab or no stab, with queen jack off with spade. So it will go check check. And the turn's a pretty magical card. Bit of a tank. Okay, so Victor's going to find another check on turn, which his hand does every time, regardless of spade. And Fedor is going to fire half pot. And his hand actually mixes a couple sizes, but also checks back like 50%. I felt like it would be a really high frequency barrel, but I guess just realizing the equity is pretty valuable too, and that's why you want to check back some amount. But he will stab here half pot. Victor's hand always calls. So Victor's played it like a master so far. The river is going to be a brutal card for him though. The offsuit 10. He does not do any donking with this range. Yeah, so it's on Fedor here. quite strangely, Queen Jack, regardless of suits, like having a spade, having no spade, mixes a jam and the sizing that he chooses, which I think is something like 70% pot. So it mixes those sizes, even if you don't have a spade. Sometimes, I don't know, it's just a weird one. So whatever. You can shove, and you can bet the sizing that he chose, and you should do it based on the roll. Obviously never checking with this hand. And what should Victor do? That's the real question of the hand. After the match, I believe in the interview with Joey, he was talking about like, they call me Victor Foldanovsky, but I actually should have folded even more. He had a couple of hands in mind where he thought I should have fucking folded. And I'm pretty sure this is one of the ones he was thinking about. So anyway, Fedor does go ahead and bet the river, and what should Victor do? This is how his range should respond. So sixes without a spade is a pure fold, and sixes with a spade sometimes bluff raises, blocking straight flush and flushes that check back. Sorry, that stab turn. On the left, we've got a cool hand coming up. 3-bet pot. Victor goes for a c-bet. Fedor's going to find a flop raise, and his particular hand doesn't want to do it, but his range can do it. The small sizing in position flop raise. So here's a look at what that should look like out of him. I don't think his hand choice is that bad. Like, he does block some amount of continues with the 10 of clubs, but yeah. Having a diamond's preferred if you're going to do a move like this, and this hand doesn't really want to do it. Is happy just flatting with the 2 overs, the backdoor straight draw. But whatever. To get the correct frequency and hold him, sometimes using the wrong hand is better than not using enough hands, you know. So he finds a flop raise, and this is Victor's response. I gave a mix of sizes, but I think realistically, if you just jam only and flat only, I think that would be an easier to play and completely fine response. So jamming a bunch of your like 10s, jacks, queens, a little bit of kings, ace 9, and flatting hands like what he has. But the reason I ran the sim is actually because of what he's about to do here, which is find a small 22% or so turn lead. And yeah, I mean, it's a tough play. His range actually does want to donk like 5 or 6% of the time, but this hand never. Some similar hands are doing it, or the preference on not having a flush draw, like these really strong hands it likes to check, I guess. But yeah, he puts Fedor in a tough spot, and I mean, shit, nobody's going to play his hand correctly, because King 10 off is just mixing like all actions against this sizing. So there's a chance that Victor just uses this play. We've seen him use these turn leads before in spots where they're not commonly done, because he thinks Fedor won't respond appropriately. And Fedor technically did overfold with that King 10 with club, but like combos with a diamond of folding and combos with a club of calling. Like, it's a super tough spot. Single raise pot on the left table. Fedor flops the nuts. That's 70% pot. Victor does play his hand a bit strangely here. Fedor's not. They both play their hand strangely, basically, in this one. Fedor c-bets, obviously, what he's doing all the time. But Victor should raise very, very often with all ace 10s and almost 100% of the time with ace of clubs 10. But he doesn't do it. For the times that he doesn't do it, he has a 10% leading range on this turn. And ace 10 leads really, really often. But not pure. It's just so many complicated spots in this game, it's awesome. But yeah. Fedor's going to overbet, which this is the weird, like, I imagine this hand would be like a pure overbet, but apparently, I guess it's heads up, a lot of different straights get there, a bunch of 2-pairs get there. This isn't the huge brick turn you assume it is, like it is in a normal 6-max cash game. So you do just want to bet this hand pure for the 3/4 sizing. But not a big deal. Anyway, he overbets. Victor is actually supposed to raise almost, I think, every ace 10 all in on the turn against an overbet, but whatever. That's not too intuitive. It's not like crazy that he comes to the river with ace 10. The reason I ran the sim is because I figured that not shoving the river here is a huge punt, and I just wanted to double check it. Plus, just for anyone interested, like in this hand as well, like I know a lot of other people would be seeing this and being like, oh, it's crazy he doesn't shove. But for those following the plot line of Fedor's potting the river, it's been garbage all day. Like, every single time he's just had garbage. And this time he's got a set, so he's balancing that range. Victor obviously never folds, and actually occasionally jams the node locked ace 10s that go to the river this way. But anyway, yeah, a bit of a strange one. Meanwhile, on the right-hand table, again with the metagame 2 big pots at the same time, with the 5-5-5 flop in a 3-bet pot. Fedor bets like 90+% of his range, 92% for the sizing that he's used, and Victor continues with like about the same percent of his own range and never raises. So he continues almost all of his range and always flats. The turn, yeah, this is complicated. To mix the sizing that Fedor chooses to mix in, he basically goes from range betting smaller, like range betting third, to mixing his sizing in and then having 7% checks. So makes this hand very, very complicated to play as him. But in any event, Victor is gonna continue always with a call with his hand. So this hand's mainly about the river than anything else, because Fedor's gonna go for like quite a wacky sizing, which if you give it as an option, his range will use, not with the hand that he has. His hand will pure check after betting this size on the turn, but would bluff had he bet smaller. Sorry, his hand would actually pure check if he bet smaller, but different combos of Queen Jack, like don't make a flush, would bluff pure on the river. However, those give up after he bets his turn sizing. Yeah, so he's going to go for this sort of like what they call a pot stun kind of sizing. It's a funny name. And yeah, what should Victor do against it? I mean, it's just another complicated spot where he has to roll some folds. And actually, 9 of spades ace is even finding like 15-20% bluff raises. And I thought the ace of clubs would be like the good one, but it doesn't really matter because ace 5 off is also a hand that 3-bets and stuff. Yeah, ace of spades 9 is finding river call, and 9 of spades ace is folding and bluffing. So it's a tricky one. Let's see if we can get the audio.
I think you hit the 6. Yeah, 1 sec, right back. Got to open my wine.
On the right table, another one of the Foldanovsky hands coming up. A standard c-bet from Fedor and call from Victor. Fedor's going to overbet, which his hand does a bunch on the turn. This is what his range looks like. And he is mostly using the overbet sizing when he bets. And I mean, when we were watching this on stream, I was like, do you know what? This might be a good fold, you know? Like, I thought that this might barely cross the line of being a good fold, but I am punting in this spot, and you should be folding way more top pair. Reason being, you have a bunch of pair plus straight draw hands that would rather continue, and that doesn't have to be top pair. Also, you got like pair and flush draw hands, so folding a bunch of your like sort of drawing dead top pairs is just crucial, and a good fold by Victor here. Left hand side single raise pot. We're gonna see one of these never a check raises. But like I mentioned earlier, sometimes if you use the wrong hand but it gets you to the correct frequency of check raise, like this could be better. This hand can, you know, turn equity on a lot of different cards, like a whatever. He turns a straight draw on like a 4, 5, what else, an 8, and a 9. Yeah, I mean, they're only gutties is the downside. Like 10-5 at least you can turn an open-ender, but yeah, he does have the club, blocks and continues. You can see what he's thinking, but anyway, it's just not a play. So I node locked in 10% of the 10 of clubs, 6 offsuit. If he had raised the flop, like these hands are just automatically shutting down on the turn. You just do not have the equity. I'm sure you block a couple of continues, but it's just not enough. Fedor's hand always calls the turn, and now on the river, Victor is betting with most of the 10s that he ends up rivering. However, he prefers a block sizing. He's not really doing much shoving. And against a shove, Fedor should actually be pure folding this hand. So just a bit of an out there hand. Like, you can't really judge Fedor's play at all because his opponent is raising wider than he should be. On the right hand table, another hand in the Foldanovsky series here coming up. We're going to see check on the flop. Fedor going to bet the turn with this hand. It does bet more frequently when he has a spade, but it's still a nice hand to be betting the turn with pretty often. He uses a 70% sizing, I believe. And it's the only sizing without being an overbet that the range wants to. I should have included an overbet maybe, but it's not too important. Plus he doesn't have ace queen, so... Anyway, Victor's hand is at like around a 50% total. Turn raise, slight preference on having the spade. But he doesn't raise his time. And on the river, what should Fedor do? He ends up doing something that looks like a heavy punt, and turns out it is a heavy punt. Overbetting with the 9-7, no spade. You should mainly give up, but you can size smaller with the 9-7, no spade. If you do have the spade though, it's a nice hand to be overbetting with. So I think like a lot of his thought was good, but you just do need the spade when it comes to overbetting a flush complete river. And what should Victor do in response? When I was watching this on stream, I was like, well, the 10 of spades doesn't really block any flushes because his opponent 3-bets jack-10 suited pure and doesn't like bet the turn as a bluff with a 10 high flush draw or for value. So yeah, I don't know, it felt like he kind of doesn't block any flushes with that in mind, but all combos are 10-6, just pure calling versus overbet. So this is the first Foldanovsky fold that is bad. So far, if I'm not mistaken.
Feels like a bad fold.
Left hand side table, we got a 3-bet pot and we got a c-bet like 50% of the time with the 10 of hearts that the c-bet's happening. And we're gonna see a turn card, ace of clubs. And Fedor sort of goes tournament mode, just out into the wild, and uses a sizing that his range should never use, and bets a hand that he should never bet. That's all this really is. I might not even conclude the pot. The EV punt, I mean, there's 50 BB in the pot. It's like, for what he does, it's only a 2 BB punt. Like, it's not insane bad. Like, it's quite bad. You don't want to punt whole blinds of EV, but when the pots get big, I mean, you'd think this is a worse play than it is. But he does block, you know, some amount of continues with the 10 of hearts. Yeah, the 9 of diamonds really isn't helping him, but he goes ahead and bets this sort of third pot sizing. Victor's play not in question at all, and the river will be a 10. Just skip to it. This sizing is never used, but for a slightly larger sizing, or it's a decent amount larger, that does get used. Every 10 that gets rivered, single pair of 10s, is just pure checking. So I think like river is well played and whatnot. Right hand side, 3-bet pot, Foldanovsky series. So far, Victor is doing well in the Foldanovsky series. We'll see if that continues in this pot. He's going to go ahead and call a c-bet, obviously very standard. No combination of 10s is raising, and his range doesn't really do much raising on the flop. On the turn, it gets interesting. I'll just skip ahead to the turn. Yeah, cool. So Fedor is checking a huge amount of his range, like 90%-ish. But of the hands that do not have a spade, that do want to bet the turn, this is one of the hands that's using like ace-4 of clubs and hearts, so not diamonds, because if you have diamonds you block some of the weakest hands that will fold. They don't want to bet. And the clubs and hearts do want to bet about a quarter of the time. So I think he finds a nice spadeless bluff. Because if you don't have enough spadeless bluffs, and you get to the river, there's a spade, you like have way too much value basically. Or weak showdown hands. Not hands that just want to barrel through. Yeah, anyway, is Victor's fold here to half pot and overfold? That's the question. And spadeless 10s, like obviously 10s with a spade never fold. Spadeless 10s do fold about a third of the time. So hard to say if he folded too often or not, because we don't know what he rolled. Left hand side, I like hands like this. It gets c-bet. We decide to call this time. You can raise sometimes, but call the rest when we have a spade with queen 10. We're going to face 150% overbet. What do? We got like the highest straight draw. That's not ace-4, ace-3. Do we need to continue some amount? Unfortunately, no. You know, keep it simple. Sure, you beat a lot of straight draws and some other bluffs, but you just got to fold. Even though the implied odds on a 9 are like incredible and stuff like that, we just have to fold the turn. Instead, we're calling some amount with ace of spades 4 and ace of spades 3. When we have those hands, we we block our opponent having like ace king, ace queen high, ace 10 high. That's like value betting against us with the ace of spades future blocker. So those hands are what we call instead of this hand in terms of high straight draws that continue to an overbet. Another reason I ran this hand is just in case the play Fedor is about to come up with is a thing. As you would predict, it is not, but he goes ahead and leads. I can't remember the sizing, like 25-30% pot on the river, something like that. Victor has rivered the nuts, so he will obviously be raising. You can kind of respect him trying to win the pot after he continued on the turn, but you know, if it was a spade, I could get with it. If it was a pot bet or like something heavier, I could get with it. I mean, I couldn't really get with it, but you know, the min bet, I don't know, man. Single raise pot over on the right. Check on the flop. And Fedor's gonna bet the turn. He should never bet, basically. It's like, I don't know, some sort of 2% bet. And Victor's gonna call, and he should never call. Actually never though, not 2%. Whatever, Node locked it in. Fedor finds a river check, which is good for his hand. Victor's obviously gonna bluff, chooses the correct sizing of the available options. And now Fedor's going to hit him with a check raise. I'm not sure if this hand was really worth including. I just decided it was a little bit interesting. And we might have had a little punting in there. But it was more about the river raise than anything else. Like, is this a nice combo? I mean, it does get you some amount. So, it would be a nice one for Fedor. He ends up showing a 5. Sorry, I'll try and... Yeah, anyway, he raises the river. And Victor obviously snap folds. Left-hand table, single raise pot, Oldanovsky series. Fedor's going to check raise here. Heavy preference with 10-8 off on having a diamond. It's raising far more with a diamond than without, but still. Something like 15% of total diamondless combos are raising. Victor peels, and Fedor's going to go for a barrel. And I was curious like about this 10-8. It felt like, I mean, you can see some upside, you can see some downside. Having some of these no diamond hands to barrel is a little bit important as well. And so I wasn't too sure, to be honest, and I was thinking smaller sizing might be more standard, because it's quite a board-changing turn. He elects to use a bit more than half pot for his turn size, and I mean, a smaller size is preferred, at least it's used with more frequency, but some of these diamondless 10-8 offs still bet the sizing that he chose on the turn. So a pretty sick barrel by him. And now the big question, should Victor fold? What do you think? You are drawing dead sometimes, you're behind a lot of the value that's betting. You have a gutty, you have the gutty. And it's not a fold, so I believe this is the second one that Victor has folded incorrectly. Left-hand table, pretty high-level hand. Victor's going to c-bet his 6s. Fedor's not going to raise this time with the Jack-8. A pretty high-frequency raise hand for your range, but not a big deal. Flatting sometimes. On the turn, this is just, yeah, it's just quite a cool street of poker. Well played by both. Victor is going to find a turn bet. It's low frequency, but like I think not enough people are finding this turn bet. Anyway, so he's going to bet the turn for this. You know, it's a reasonable sizing. 70% of the pot or so. And Fedor is going to come in with a raise. And yeah, this is it's just a very nice raise. Sure, there's a preference on having a heart because you block more continues. But Jack-8 no heart is still raising pretty reasonable frequency. And so he's going to raise, and then as Victor, what do? You know, you got 6s. You can be literally dead. Like, sure, sometimes your 2 outs are incredible and you can stack a 9, but is your opponent check raising enough bluffs? And yeah, he ends up calling, and it is a pure call. So very well done. Of the times that you bet 6s on the turn, calling the raise is the way to go. The river is, yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one on the river. Fedor does not have a heart in his hand, so his opponent will have more just auto folds, facing Fedor's river pot bet, which is actually a preferred size. Well, I didn't list heaps of sizes, but it's better than an overbet. And should he bluff the Jack-8? We were watching this one on the stream. It was quite a fun hand to talk with to the viewers. And I was thinking he doesn't bluff. I'm just kind of bragging here because he actually shouldn't bluff with this. But the main reason is just that with the Jack, he blocks too many of his opponent's weakest hands. But I think the thought process isn't bad. He's thinking, I don't have hearts. He's going to have hearts more. Like, I have an 8, it blocks a lot of his 9s. I have a jack that's also blocking a lot of his 9s, but yeah, it's just not a bluff. However, he's going to bluff it, and his opponent does have a weak hand. Should Victor ever call here with the 6s? Or do the 6s block some potential bluffs, like 6-7, 6-8 or something like that might check raise the turn? In any event, all 6s are a fold, so well played to Victor. And yeah, just a cool little hand involving some low frequency actions. Single raise pot on the right hand table. Volkanovski series. Fedor finds a really cool check raise on the flop. One that I saw it, I was like, what? Raising this? That's kind of crazed. But the 2 overs to the 4, to the 7, 6s, 5s. Are pretty good. Can turn an open ender on a 10, gutty on a queen or a 7. With the backdoor flush equity. And blocking some continues with their 9 of clubs. It is good to raise this particular combo like 20% of the time, so really nice raise. Victor obviously calls the flop and is about to fold to a turn bet. Firstly, what's Fedor's bet like? Does the sizing he chooses fit into the strategy for his range? Yes, it does. An excellent choice, and how should Victor respond to it? Have a little think. Do you think this is an overfold? Not? Frequency? Have a little think. He's supposed to fold this 55% of the time with these suits. It's relevant actually what suits, because if you have the 9 of diamonds blocking some of Fedor's weakest check raises, it's a pure fold turn. Obviously never folding with a club. But yeah, a nice fold for Malinowski. Definitely not an overfold. It's pretty easy to roll, 45 or less, you know. Left hand table, 3-bet pot. Fedor is going to c-bet this hand. It's like a 40% play. Victor's going to call, something you should always do. The reason I'm including it is just because Fedor makes a good play on the turn. I think it's worth showing. I listed a bunch of different sizings that one could take on the turn, but because the stacks are a bit deeper, and it's a board where, you know, you have a large advantage with your aces and ace-king, you want to put the pressure on. You have infinite king-queen and shit. You've got like all the sets. You just want to be able to put the pressure on and stack your opponent a bunch. So if he didn't adjust and have some large bet sizes here, it would be a punt. And this blocks a lot of your opponent's value. It blocks queen 7, king 7 suited, and pocket 7s. It's just really important. Your 5 also unblocks a bunch of weak hands, like any straight draw, which has to fold to this, or, you know, non-open ender straight draw has to fold to this. So yeah, it's just a really nice barrel from Fedor on the turn, and I felt like showing it. Victor's going to fold, and he should never call. So, well played by Victor, well played by Fedor, just a nice hand overall.
Jack fold, have to fold. I was thinking maybe one time see the river.
To pay 10. Ding.
Yeah, like maybe 10.
I'm back, Victor.
And then I felt no 10 will come, so I surrender.
Sounds fair.
Last time 10 on the river helped me.
Left hand table. Victor calls a c-bet, turns 2-pair with a queen 7, and unfortunately this is the Volkanovski series. It's not a great one. I think to most people who've run a lot of sims, this is a pretty obvious no-fold river spot, and not a bluff raise or anything, just a pure call. And I really feel like Victor probably knows that and has decided to go for an exploitative fold here. Anyway, we'll let the hand play out. Also, just have a guess, what do you reckon? Fedor bluffing the river here, good or bad? Have a little think. Turns out it's no good. I guess you're just blocking too many parent gutties and stuff like that. Like, you know, a 9 block straight's a lot more than a 10 does. He has weaker hands, like with a 5 that are happily going to fire away on the river, and it's a board pairing card on a rainbow board. You know, your opponent's folding far less now. It's really improved their range. So this Jackson off is overdoing it from Fedor. So a lot of people were saying Fedor's over bluffing and you're over folding against him. In this particular pot, it's definitely what's going on. For what it's worth, Fedor should overbet the river a reasonable amount with his range, not with his hand. This hand's just pure checking back, but against an overbet, Victor can start folding this hand. In fact, folding it almost always, but against this sizing, just calling every time. Looking at the right hand table here, I feel compelled to say, like, I think I've been pretty critical of the players, but I'm sitting here like with all the information, you know, like if you're playing in game, you don't even play heads up, say you're Fedor, you know, like ranges are wide, decisions are close, like it's very easy to punt. And I think overall, like he's playing very well. Limitless, I am surprised that he's not playing better. Like I just assumed he would be like really sick, really close to GTO. It's just a fucking hard game, honestly. But the reason I'm including this hand is because I saw this one and I was just like, yep, this is a really nice, well-played hand. Let's just include it. Like, I felt like all the pots I choose, they're just punts and, you know, because they're the more interesting ones. Like, you want to find out, are these guys making mistakes, you know? Like, what's going on? You don't want to look at a hand you think's been perfectly played and just be like, well, this is interesting. So Fedor plays it very well up to the river, so does Victor. Fedor always checks the turn, check raises the flop a lot. Victor always calls the flop, always checks back the turn. The river, I'm really shocked. Like, I thought that what Fedor did here was an excellent choice. And maybe he can even go all in, but he bets slightly more than 2 times pot. And I thought this was just an awesome play. He gets his opponent to fold in this spot, and his opponent should always fold. But his range doesn't really want to use this size. He prefers to use a smaller sizing. So that he can value bet all of the jacks that he check raised, basically, for the times that he bets, and he actually check raises a lot of his sick value hands on the river, expecting his opponent to bet with all the jacks that you don't block when you have a set or 6-4 or whatever. So yeah, I'm surprised that this isn't a thing. It feels like it's quite a nice little thing. Victor's, he's not totally capped, but he's quite weak after checking back turn, and we still have some really strong hands in our range, like a bunch of different 2-pair combos. We even river 2-pair a bit on this card, and rivering a straight sometimes, obviously, too. So I thought this is a really good play, and, the game is just really fucking hard. That's why I'm talking about this, and that's why I'm showing this pot. Over on the left table, we have Victor about to check back a top pair on this board, and Fedor gonna find an overbet stab on turn with a gut shot. He blocks a couple of the flush draws with the spade and the club. The 5-6 never does this. You just need a little bit better equity, basically, to be using the overbet sizing. But his range does use the sizing a little bit, so there you go. And Victor never folds his hand to that turn bet. It's just a question of river. What should Victor do facing the bet size that Fedor's going to find? And how is Fedor's hand for the river bet? Like, seems like a pretty good bluff. And it is a pretty good bluff. He does use a mix of sizes here, but easily finds the correct one with the hand that he has. And what should Victor do facing that bet? Like, do you fold all your top pair? If so, how does this one stack up? And he actually finds an excellent top pair for a fold.
Oh, yeah.
Victor Foldanovsky.
And the reason that the other kings are calling is like they unblock more of the bluffs, or they block 6-7, which is always value betting for that sizing. Left-hand table, Fedor's going to value bet his ace-queen, which almost all ace-queen does on this board, regardless of diamond. He's betting about 70% range total. Victor's going to flat. He could have the cheeky raise in there, like pretty low frequency, but whatever. Goes for a standard flat. And when Fedor checks, which he always should do with ace-queen on the turn, Victor is going to stab, which all of his jack-6 suited does, and they all mix sizes. Like, even if you have the diamonds, you still mix both sizes, and his combo mixes both sizes that I gave to. So he'll go ahead and do that. Fedor is going to call, which is a pretty heavy punt. Like, most ace-queen is folding, but ace of diamonds queen is folding even more so than any other ace-queen. Hard to know that kind of thing, but the general takeaway is just ace-queen is folding to the stab size on the turn, almost always. But he goes ahead and calls, and the reason I ran this sim is actually because of the river. I had seen Victor giving up quite a lot of spots where he doesn't have the blocker to the flush that arrives on the river. And I just wanted to know, like, is this good or bad? Some of the ones we ran the other day, where he gave up like a 5-deuce and a 3-deuce, were pretty bad. But this one, he does have like lower showdown value hands than this jack. Even though this jack just doesn't win the pot ever. I mean, I guess his opponent could have some amount of 10-8 check calling the turn. It's super whack though. But yeah, I mean, he doesn't win the pot ever when he checks, but it is a great check. His range plays like just jam or check, and this hand only jams like, 5% of the time or something. River pot on the right hand side table. Fedor flops the joint against top pair and a backdoor flush and straight draw. Pretty cold one. Goes for the c-bet, Victor goes for the call, and we move on to a turn. And now this is another nice sort of intuitive play by Fedor. He finds like a pretty heavy sizing. Even though his range does want to check this turn about 2/3 of the time, using this larger size off these stacks is a pretty good play. Hands like 9s and 10s will even do it for value because they block a lot of the hands that beat them, plus they have extra equity. Yeah, I mean, even like a lot of your overpairs like jacks are still going for these larger bets and then just trying to stack your opponent's single pair on a brick. But yeah, his hand can trap a decent amount, but obviously also does bet, and when it bets usually uses this size. So nice play from him. Victor has the 10-7 of hearts, like if you want to get specific about the exact combos, and is about to face a jam from Fedor, which is a good choice. As in, like, Fedor's bet sizing is a good choice on the river. The 10-7 of hearts does block the 6-7 and 7-8 of hearts. That's not bad. You could say that spades are the same. And both of those hands will be calling the river. Clubs will pure fold because they don't block the 2-pair combos. Plus, I think some hands like, Queen 10, that 3-bet pre and c-bet, that has a club, bets the turn a higher frequency and then will bluff jam this river. So I think there's a couple reasons why you don't want to call 10-7 of clubs on the river. But I think this is one of the folds Victor said in the post-game interview that he regrets. There was a couple of folds he didn't make. And he also calls it off pretty quickly, which is uncharacteristic of him. I think he thought it was a standard snap, like with the 9-10 blocker and whatnot, and the 6-7, 7-8 suited blocker. But I don't know. I think he called it a little bit and wishes he thought about it more. And it's hard not to be results orientated, especially when this man comes dancing in your face. And they're pissing themselves laughing at it. It's quite a funny little moment. Left hand table had to include this hand just because it's 7 deuce. Victor tends to be the man who has 7 deuce, but this time it's Fedor. And he's going to find a little raise here on the flop. Kind of an interesting play. Like blocking some of the parent straight draw hands, blocking some open-enders, some like 7-8 offsuit with a club, and obviously 2 parent sets. So it does find a raise sometimes. Victor's hand always calls against the raise. And on the board, pairing 4 should he bluff 7 deuce. A different suit you could imagine could be better because at least it blocks the deuce 4 suited then. His hand should always just give up and take its okay-ish attempt to show down. For the times that it's raised the flop, but he does go ahead and fire a pretty big size. Victor actually is supposed to fold a decent amount of this, like 2/3 of 5-6 off that doesn't have a club, which was a bit surprising too. We got a full house draw. We got some, I guess his 6 of diamonds specifically is a little bit worse, but whatever. He does call, and on the river, should Fedor find some sort of crazed play? No. For the node-locked 7 deuce I gave him, it doesn't want to bluff at all. It still beats some hands, like it can win a showdown here. So yeah, he ends up giving it up and Limitless checks it back. After this 7 deuce showdown, we kind of get teleported into what seems to be a 4-bet pot that it's gone check, c-bet, call. Fedor should be range betting the flop, and Victor should never raise with this hand on the flop. Although this is what his flop range looks like. It's a really complicated defending strategy, but he plays his hand well. And then on the turn, he's got these for options, and that is some very hard to implement strategy. 4-bet pots are kind of crazy because the SPR is low, and you can do all kinds of crazy shit. Sorry about that. This has been a marathon session. Anyway. Of the combos of ace-5 that can check back turn, like most are just getting it in without a club. But the ace of clubs combos are the ones that do find the sneaky check back. Not super often, but a decent amount, and a lot more than the other combos. Should Victor bluff the river, now that he's gotten here in this way? No. He just beats enough hands. The real question is, because Fedor chooses correctly just to be jamming this hand pure, all combos with the ace of clubs 5 are shoving the river. What should Fedor do? Sorry, what should Victor do facing this bet size? He seems to not really give a fuck. He's having a laugh about something right now. But it's a tough spot. Like, have a little think about it. Like, lots of the 4-bets that bluff pre-flop just end up with rags on this board. It's not that hard for him to just want to check back, like, with no equity, really. Maybe trying to hit an overcard, you know? Some sort of a king 10 or some bullshit hand like that. And then he bricks it off. He's like, well, what can I do? I'm all in. And you unblock all those kind of hands with this. So yeah, it's a tricky one, as Victor. And he actually can call the river reasonably often with this hand, but he goes for a fold, and it's one that he's also doing quite often, so nothing really to judge about this play from both players, and unfortunately we missed the pre-flop action, but it does seem to be a 4-bet pot. It makes sense for both the hands, the pot size, everything like that, so yeah, just not a good session for Victor, man. Nothing going his way, really. So on the right table, this is during the river shove with the nut flush against Victor's 5-6 suited bluff catcher. We're gonna see a flop check raise from a hand that's like quite obviously an automatic fold, despite having some backdoor straight draw or whatever potential. And I can't help but think that the reason is because it's sort of like this heads up leveling thing where you're trying to like convince your opponent that you're being quite an aggressive player, so that he pays you off on the other table. And I don't want to call this particular thought low level, but it's a little bit like, it's kind of like the first level of thinking. It's like, I'll convince him, you know, that I'm really aggressive. Whereas realistically, Victor's played a lot of heads up. He's probably seen that before in terms of the leveling war, and he knows it's like, I don't know. To me, like, we can see the fucking cards. It's hard not to have this opinion. But we've got to never bluffing. It really seems like that's the level he's on. Anyway, I no-blocked some of it, and, you know, most of the time he turns to 10, he's checking it, so with this hand, it's every single time. And Victor, actually, it was 3-bet or fold on the flop, basically, with all combos of 5-6 offsuit. Suited peels with some backdoor, and now there's only one combo of that in total. That combo will call the river bet that Fedor's about to make, and the sizing actually does get used a little bit. I thought it would never get used with the hand that he has, but it does. And yeah, you can't really blame Victor for snap calling the river, which is what I believe he's going to do. Single raise pot on the left table. And yeah, a bit of a crazed one. Victor's going to check raise. And Mr. Holz is going to find a punt call. The sim was called 9-3 suited punt call. And it was correct to be called so. He's burning 2 blinds in a small pot by peeling this hand on the flop. So yeah, it's a rough one. Anyway, I chucked it in. It's a dodgy sim. But yeah, Victor should also be betting third a lot of the time with 7-5, but does check like 25% or so. The 9-3 of hearts, if it had called the flop, would actually just not bet the turn. That's because like a lot of hands that have like 9 of hearts, whatever, some kind of straight draw on the flop would check raise and then give up this turn a bit. So it's a super bad hand to be betting. But he does bet, and Victor always calls against the bet. And then on this river, it's a tough one. He's going to check, and now finally the 9-3 can shine. This is a good hand to be bluffing with, but actually the preferred sizing for the 9-3 hearts on the river is to jam. Fedor goes ahead and bets a more value-y looking sizing, and against that sizing, Limitless can't do shit but fold. So, yeah, I mean, look, Fedor does well to have a bluff that doesn't involve a diamond, and it's just, I don't know. There's not much to say about this. It's just, this is why you want to avoid making mistakes on prior streets. He sort of recovers from his error with the turn and the river bet. I mean, the turn is arguably quite bad too, but He does nicely on the river, and he makes some sort of recovery, but the flop is really a heavy punt, and you know, look at his opponent's hand. He did quite well to get him to, like, he needs the run up, you know, to be something like this to get his opponent to fold what he had. Otherwise, like, this would have just been a hilarious punt hand, like if it just went brick, check call for a jam or something. Anyway, kind of cool hand. Right hand side, we got a 3-bet pot. Fedor's about to make a standard c-bet. Limitless is going to call. But it's the turn where the hand starts to get interesting. The card that's going to roll is going to be the 3 of hearts. And Fedor is going to think about whether he should barrel with this type of straight draw. You know, it's like a non-heart barrel. You might want to have some straight draws doing this. This all makes sense. I think there's good logic there, but if you think about it, would you want a pure bet with these hands? Probably not, right? Like, it would be a frequency play. And it turns out Jack-9 of clubs and diamonds do bet about 1/3 of the time. But you would never want to use spades here because you block some of your opponent's weakest hands. Even though it's not a huge amount of hands, it's like Ace-9, King-9, and Queen-9 of spades. They're always flatting the flop, and they're always folding the turn. So having this 9 of spades, yeah, basically because you only use 1/3 of the better combos, why would you use any of the shittest combo? But you know, it's pretty niche. I think, like, if he's just thinking, okay, I need to have some non-heart bluffs here, like this hand makes a bit of sense. Overcut to the 10, gutshot to like a strong straight. So yeah, I don't mind it. But the reason I ran the sim was actually because of the river. I was watching it unfold and thinking, oh shit, this is a really good hand to bluff, and it turns out that that's correct. So I'm, you know, little pat on my own back for that one. But yeah, blocking pocket nines is relevant. Having some non-heart bluffs on the river is good. And if you just think about it. Like, you're just never winning the showdown with a check. Whereas you block pocket nines and, you know, it's hard for you to have just a wide array of bluffs here. Especially if you're shutting down hands like this. So yeah, would have been a cool bluff for pot, but he doesn't go for it and Victor is going to check it back and win. 4-bet pot on the right. It's just a sort of strange hand, really. Victor's exact hand, like this kind of ace-10, no spade, no heart. Shouldn't see bet too often. For the size he uses, probably about 50% total. Fedor continues his hand pure on the flop. And then just think of a cooler turn. It's gonna come. The 10 of spades, and Victor makes quite a strong play here. Often in 6-max cash, the play you're about to see is literally never done ever, and a huge punt if you do it. The in-position full pot ram. It's just not a common line, especially in 4-bet pots. But in this heads-up situation, his hand is doing it pure, so he knows his shit. And Fedor's gonna snap call, and that's really what the hand's about. Technically, his hand is a fold, but the EV difference is minimal. It's like a 20th of a blind in a huge pot, so you can't really fault him. The Splash Man comes to party again. These guys just, I don't know, they're having fun, man. That's cool. Another 4-bet pot on the left table, and Victor won't be shoving his 10s pre this time. They are a bit deeper, so it'll be happening less often. And this is like take 7 of this hand, because I'm getting real tired. Yeah, anyway, whatever. Flops an overpair. Fedor gonna range bet, or, you know, should range bet, and it looks like he's executing that properly. Victor gonna come in with like the little Rizzy, the min Rizzy. And Fedor's gonna go deep into the tank against this. And look, it's a fucking complicated one. That 5's not helping, you know. It probably even blocks a couple of bluffs. And yeah, you've got 1 over, 1 under to a lot of Victor's pairs, but you're getting an insane price. You can potentially bluff on an ace or a king or even a jack. It's a real tricky one, but yeah, you are supposed to continue it 100% of the time, and he will end up finding a call after tanking for a bit. But the reason that I ran this sim isn't even anything to do with the Queen 5 call, it's just the 10s play on the turn. Like, think of a turn that you would always check with 10s. That's not an ace. And anyway, that turn is coming. And for some reason, Victor doesn't check it. He actually fires it pretty quickly. And when I watched this, I was thinking, well, I guess like he's value raising a lot of pairs on the flop. You know, 10's sure is one of them, but maybe he's thinking he's got a lot of these smaller pairs too. I'm just trying to put high card hands in a tough spot, and then when that occurs, he doesn't want to just let them realize their equity for free, so he puts them in another tough spot. Sometimes they'll be really cooked, some of the ace high hands. Sometimes they'll, you know, be getting correct odds to call and fold. So I thought that that's what he was thinking. Who knows what he was thinking? But in general, with spots similar to this, where you have top set, you just auto check. Been a pleasure, boys. This will be the final hand. Foldenovsky series. Definitely one he got a bit of shit over. I don't know, man. I don't know if I got any more of these videos in me. That was a real marathon. Anyway, he c-bets the flop for 70% pot. It's obviously fucking standard. Fedor calls. Sometimes he can raise. Who cares? He's gonna bet the turn. His hand splits this size and an overbet. Yep. He bets it. Fedor's hand's actually a pure fold, funnily enough. So the theme of overbluff versus overfold does seem to be true. Fedor is going to raise the turn. Victor, it's really obvious that he shouldn't fold, but he decides to fold. I think he just feels that the guy has it, you know? That's the only way you can really explain it. I don't think he thought it was some sort of GTO fold, some frequency. I think he just decided, oh, I'm gonna just fucking fold. I think he's got it. But yeah, thank you for those who have watched the whole video. I really appreciate any liking and commenting, specifically the commenting, but also the liking, the subscribing, all this bullshit. It is good. It's really the only reward I get for donking off what's about 20 hours of my life making this single fucking video. Really a brutal couple of days, man. And they're gonna go and play on Saturday. I'm just so fucking busy, man. If any of you really want to help me out for the next round, which I believe is coming out like tomorrow night, you're gonna watch the thing anyway. If you could record the timestamps of interesting hands and just chuck it in the comment section and tag me, that would be fucking amazing. Because that process takes a long time for me as well. Maybe I'll listen to what they said. They looked like they're having a bit of a laugh there.
So far, not a good fold. I don't believe you. Good fold, good fold. Very nice.
I mean, it is great for me. I am indeed very happy.
That's true. That makes sense.